Chapter 1. The Wedding Invitation. The envelope sat on her kitchen counter like it was mocking her. Elegant calligraphy, rose gold trim, thick cardstock. Everything about it screamed perfect. And everything about it made Kate Hawthorne's stomach twist. She'd opened it 3 days ago. Read it twice. Thought she'd burned it in the sink. But here it was again, somehow heavier now, even though the words were the same. You are cordially invited to the wedding of Jonathan Moore and Lila Hawthorne, her ex-boyfriend, and her younger sister. Kate dropped the envelope on the table, hands trembling. She reached for her mug of cold tea, barely tasting it as she stared out the window of her small Seattle apartment. 5 years. That's how long she'd dated Jonathan. 2 years. That's how long he'd been dating Lila behind her back. Now, in 2 weeks, they were getting married, and she was expected to smile her way through the whole affair like nothing had happened. Kate had thought she was over it. Over him. Over them. She'd moved cities, started her own graphic design studio, gone to therapy, even adopted a dog named Theo who slept like a small furnace at her feet every night. But one piece of expensive mail had unraveled months of hard-earned peace. She picked it up again and read the line she hadn't been able to stomach the first time. Reception to follow at the family estate. RSVP with a +1 by Friday. A +1. She laughed once, short and humorless. Who would she even bring? Her last relationship had ended when he told her she had emotional trust issues and spent more time sketching typography than holding his hand. Besides, this wasn't about romance. This was survival. She couldn't show up alone. Not to this. If she did, they'd all think she was still the sad older sister. The one who couldn't hold on to a man, or a job, or her pride. She rubbed her forehead, groaning. Okay, she whispered to herself. You are not doing this again. She marched to her laptop, opened it, and stared at the blinking cursor for a full 60 seconds before typing the words she never thought she'd seriously consider. Seeking temporary boyfriend for 1 weekend. Strictly platonic. Must be charming, discreet, and able to fake romantic interest in a woman with mild social anxiety and an aggressively engaged family. She stared at it, shook her head, and then deleted the last sentence. Too honest. She started again. More direct. More professional. A little less desperate. Looking to hire a fake boyfriend for a weekend wedding. Must be respectful, well-spoken, good with people. Compensation and travel covered. Strictly no strings. It was ridiculous. It was also her only option. She hit post. Then she closed the laptop, sat back, and waited for regret to set in. But instead of dread, a strange sense of peace settled over her. Maybe this wouldn't work. Maybe no one would respond. But at least she was doing something. And right now, doing something felt better than doing nothing at all. Chapter 2. The Craigslist Solution. Kate didn't expect a response so fast. But less than 6 hours after posting her carefully worded ad, her inbox pinged with a message titled, Wedding Date Roll, Professional Inquiry. She clicked it hesitantly, bracing for weirdness or something wildly inappropriate. But instead, she found a clean, well-written message that read more like a resume than a reply. Hi, Kate. Saw your ad. Bold move. I respect it. My name is Aiden Blake. I've done stand-in gigs before, mostly +1 events, family functions, and yes, one high society wedding where I had to pretend to like jazz and lobster bisque. I'm not a creep. I'm not looking for anything beyond what you've described. If you want someone who's polite, punctual, knows how to charm a crowd, or a suspicious grandmother, I'm available. Happy to provide references if you want. Let me know if you'd like to talk more. No pressure. Aiden. Kate blinked. Then blinked again. Polite. Punctual. References? She clicked his name and found a LinkedIn profile. Former theater major turned corporate events manager. Lived in Tacoma. Mid-30s. Clean cut in his profile picture. Dimples, unfortunately. Of course he had dimples. Kate sat back and stared at the screen, uncertain whether to laugh or call the police. But there was something different about this one. He wasn't trying to flirt. He wasn't offering to make it extra realistic. He was professional. She scrolled down and saw the last line. P.S. I do not, and will never, wear matching outfits. I have my limits. She snorted. Okay. He had a sense of humor, too. 2 days later, they met at a coffee shop downtown. Neutral territory. Kate arrived first and immediately regretted every life choice that had led her to this point. She was wearing a navy blue sweater and jeans that had started to lose their structure. Her hair was pulled back in a clip. She looked like someone about to interview for a fake boyfriend. Then he walked in. Tall, well-built, but not flashy. Dark hair, darker eyes, wore confidence like it was part of his coat. Aiden Blake spotted her immediately and smiled. It wasn't a flirtatious smile. It was reassuring. "Kate?" he asked, approaching the table. She nodded, rising to shake his hand. "You're early." "Habit," he said. "My mom's a retired Army nurse. I was trained to be 15 minutes early for everything, including breakfast." She smirked, sitting. "You weren't kidding about the punctual part." "Nope." He slid into the seat across from her. "And you weren't kidding about the awkward family wedding, I take it?" Her smile faded slightly. "You read the room." Aiden held up his hands. "No judgment. Just here to help." She studied him for a moment. "Why do you do this?" "The fake dating thing." His gaze didn't falter. "Because sometimes people just need someone to stand next to them while they face the hard stuff. I've seen how it changes things." Kate tilted her head. "You don't think it's a little weird?" "Oh, it's definitely weird," he said with a grin. "But that doesn't mean it's not also kind." That disarmed her more than she expected. They talked for another hour. Went over expectations, boundaries, the fact that they'd have to share a room at the estate, but in name only. That PDA would be minimal. That this was strictly a performance. Kate laid out her deal breakers. Aiden nodded through every one. By the end, she found herself feeling strangely safe. Like maybe this wasn't as crazy as it sounded. "All right," she said, reaching for her bag. "You're hired." Aiden smiled, extending his hand again. "It'll be the most polite fake relationship you've ever had." She took his hand. "Let's hope it stays that way." Chapter 3. Enter Aiden Blake. The wedding weekend came faster than Kate expected. One moment, she was signing off emails and double-checking client deadlines, and the next, she was packing a suitcase with outfits she'd never have worn if she weren't about to walk into her personal version of a romantic war zone. At least she wouldn't be walking in alone. Aiden was due to arrive any minute. Her apartment buzzed with anxious energy, or maybe that was just her. She kept checking her phone, the clock, the mirror. Her hair was already curled, her makeup minimal but effort. A pale green sweater paired with white jeans gave her that I didn't try too hard look that had, in fact, taken an hour. Theo, her floppy-eared spaniel mix, sat on the couch chewing his bone with judgmental silence. "You're no help," Kate muttered as she zipped up her weekend bag. The knock came at exactly 8 a.m. Not a minute early. Not a second late. Of course it did. She opened the door to find Aiden standing there in a dark forest green button-up, sleeves rolled to his forearms, duffel bag slung casually over one shoulder. "You ready?" he asked with a smile. Kate blinked. "You look too handsome for a fake boyfriend," he offered, stepping inside. "I was going to say weirdly put together for 8 in the morning, but that works too." He chuckled. "I figured if I'm going to meet the parents and the ex-boyfriend/brother-in-law to be, I should look the part." Her stomach flipped. She hated that he was right. She hated more that she hadn't let herself think about how convincing this would need to be. Aiden didn't just look like someone you'd fall for. He carried himself like a man who knew what to do with your heart once you had. She turned away quickly. "Let me just grab my charger." While she disappeared down the hall, Aiden wandered the living room. He paused at a shelf lined with books, sketch pads, and a few hand-drawn logo mock-ups. "Did you design these?" he called. Kate reappeared, phone in hand. "Yeah, I run a branding studio, mostly for indie authors and small businesses." "That explains the creativity in your Craigslist ad." "You mean the desperation?" "I mean the precision," he said, giving her a warm look. "You knew exactly what you needed." And somehow, that compliment felt more intimate than anything he could have said about her outfit or her hair. They packed up the car and hit the road just after sunrise. The Hawthorne family estate was 2.5 hours east, tucked in the mountains just outside Wenatchee, a sprawling vineyard property with too many windows and not enough privacy. Kate hadn't been back in almost a year. Not since the engagement announcement. Not since her mother had called and gently said, "You'll still come to the wedding, won't you, darling? It's time to let bygones be bygones." As if betrayal could be filed under misunderstandings. As they drove, Aiden kept the conversation light. He told stories about his past gigs, the fake fiancé hired for a military gala, the cousin role he played at a retirement party. His voice was steady, comforting, threaded with just enough charm to keep her from spiraling. "You do this often?" Kate asked after he described pretending to be an architect for a date's skeptical father. He shrugged. Maybe once or twice a year. People find me through referrals. Most of the time, it's not about romance. It's about protection. She turned to look at him. Protection? Yeah. From nosy relatives. From judgment. From old wounds people haven't quite healed yet. Kate stared out the window, the mountains rolling in slowly like quiet giants. Sounds familiar. Aiden glanced at her, but didn't press. When they finally pulled into the long gravel driveway that snaked up to the estate, Kate's breath hitched. It was just as she remembered, too big, too polished, with a wraparound porch and rose gardens that never stayed in bloom on their own, no matter what her mother claimed. There's still time to turn around, she muttered. I'll drive if you want, Aiden offered. She shook her head. No, let's get it over with. They got out, retrieved the luggage, and walked up the front steps. Kate paused at the door. Aiden stepped beside her. Last chance, he said gently. She took a breath, squared her shoulders. Let's do it. She opened the door and stepped into the fire. Katie, her mother's voice rang out like a bell, equal parts warm and performative. Katie, darling, you're here. She swept forward in a linen dress, pearls at her neck, arms open wide. Kate let herself be hugged, only stiffly, and then stepped back. Hi, Mom. And this must be? Her mother asked, eyebrows raised as she turned to Aiden. Kate took a quick breath. This is Aiden, my boyfriend. It was the first time she'd said it out loud. Aiden extended his hand smoothly. Pleasure to meet you, Mrs. Hawthorne. Her mother looked impressed, or at least intrigued. Call me Clarice. Aiden smiled like he'd been doing this his whole life. Of course. Kate's told me so much about you. Kate nearly choked. Her mother turned with a flourish. Well, come in, come in. Lila's in the parlor with the bridal party. Jonathan should be here soon. The name made Kate stiffen. Aiden caught it, gently placed his hand at the small of her back. Not possessive, not pushy, just there. And for reasons she didn't want to examine, it made her feel okay. They were ushered to their guest room on the second floor. One queen bed, gold fixtures, and a framed photo of her sister's engagement on the nightstand. Kate groaned the moment the door clicked shut. I should have asked for 2 beds. It's fine, Aiden said, dropping his bag on a bench. I've slept on floors worse than this. The army nurse mom again. Kate smiled faintly, then sat at the edge of the bed, running a hand through her hair. Are you all right? He asked. No, she admitted. But I will be. Aiden crouched in front of her, looking up at her like he didn't want to fix it, just see it. You don't have to be perfect here, he said softly. You just have to be real. Her eyes glistened. No one's told me that in years. He stood, then offered her his hand. Come on, let's go charm the Hawthorns. Kate wiped her eyes and took his hand. And as they walked toward the parlor, where her sister's laughter rang like wedding bells through the hall, she thought, for the first time, that maybe this plan wasn't just survival. Maybe, just maybe, it was the beginning of something real. Chapter 4. The Rules of Pretending. Kate stood in front of the antique mirror in her childhood bedroom, adjusting the delicate gold chain at her neck. The dress was soft blue chiffon, simple, flattering, and modest. She'd chosen it specifically to blend in, not stand out. She didn't want eyes on her. Not this weekend. Too bad she'd shown up with Aiden Blake. Because everyone was looking. Downstairs, the rehearsal dinner was already buzzing with activity. Glasses clinked. Music played softly through speakers, and laughter echoed through the high-ceilinged foyer of the Hawthorne estate. Kate could already imagine the questions. Where had she been hiding him? How serious were they? Wasn't it ironic that she finally found love now that Jonathan was marrying her sister? The whole thing felt like a slow-motion emotional ambush. Aiden knocked on the doorframe lightly. Ready? She turned, and her breath caught in her throat. He wore a navy suit, clean lines, well-fitted, and looked like someone straight out of a holiday movie. No tie, but the top button of his white shirt undone just enough to give him the air of someone confident but relaxed. You clean up okay, she managed. Just okay. He feigned a wounded expression. She smirked, grabbing her clutch. Let's get this over with. He fell in step beside her as they walked down the stairs. Nervous? No, she lied. Good, because I am, he teased, then leaned in to whisper. Remind me which cousin is the one who thinks I'm a yoga instructor? Second cousin Dana. She lives in Bend. She's harmless. And the brother-in-law I'm not supposed to punch. Kate smiled grimly. That'd be Jonathan. Got it. I'll keep my hands in my pockets. At the bottom of the stairs, they were immediately spotted. Katie, Lila called, sweeping toward them in a seafoam green dress that clung to every angle with polished perfection. Her golden hair was curled, her nails painted a soft shell pink. She kissed Kate on both cheeks, air only, and then her eyes flicked to Aiden. And this must be? Kate swallowed. Aiden Blake. My boyfriend. Aiden stepped forward with practiced ease, offering Lila his hand. It's great to finally meet you. Kate's told me so much. Lila's smile tightened, but she shook his hand. Has she now? Interesting. Aiden's smile was bulletproof. All good things. Clarice appeared behind Lila with 2 flutes of champagne and thrust one toward Kate. Darling, you must tell me. Where did you find him? Kate took the glass, clinking it lightly to avoid answering. I'm just glad she brought someone, Lila added. We were all wondering if she'd brave it alone. Aiden slipped his arm around Kate's waist, warm and steady. Oh, I would have followed her here even if I had to sit in the trunk, he said easily. She's kind of hard to let out of your life once she's in it. Kate glanced at him, startled. It wasn't just a good line. It sounded true. Even Lila blinked, caught off guard. Well, Clarice said, fanning herself slightly. Isn't he just a charmer? Kate sipped her champagne to keep from saying something snarky. They navigated the first hour like pros. Aiden was brilliant. He remembered every detail Kate had briefed him on during their coffee shop meeting. Her job, her old piano teacher, the fake, how we met story involving spilled coffee, and a rainy bookstore. He fielded questions with grace, laughed at the right moments, and knew just when to put a hand on the small of her back, or look at her with gentle amusement that felt almost real. Almost. When they finally found a quiet corner near the hors d'oeuvres table, Kate leaned against the wall with a sigh. I owe you so many cookies for this. Aiden handed her a glass of sparkling water. I don't do it for cookies. Why do you do it? She asked. He looked down for a moment, then back at her. Because sometimes people need a shield to walk into battle. Doesn't mean they're weak. Just means the fight isn't fair. She stared at him. You don't even know me, she said quietly. I didn't have to, he replied. I read your ad. Saw the pain between the lines. You didn't ask for pity. You asked for partnership. Kate didn't know what to say to that. No one had ever put it quite like that before. No one had seen past the sarcasm and the defense mechanisms. Aiden did, without asking for anything in return. Well, she said after a long pause, thank you for being a very convincing shield. He lifted his glass. To pretending. She clinked his glass lightly. Let's lay out the rules before anyone starts believing this is real. Hit me. Rule 1. No kissing unless it's absolutely necessary for the illusion. His mouth twitched. Define necessary. She gave him a look. Got it, he said, grinning. Strictly visual. Rule 2. You do not fall in love with me. He raised a brow. Was that going to be an option? Not even remotely. Then it'll be the easiest rule I've ever followed. She nodded. Rule 3. When this is over, we part ways. No texts. No check-ins. We vanish. His smile dimmed slightly. Cold. But fair. I don't do gray areas. Aiden held her gaze for a moment. Then nodded. Agreed. She exhaled slowly. Good, she said. Now we just have to survive the next 48 hours. Easy, he said, offering his arm. Let's go dazzle the skeptics. But it wasn't easy, because Jonathan found them not 10 minutes later. He looked good. Dark gray suit, clean shave, a gold watch peeking from beneath his cuff. The kind of man who used confidence like a cologne. Kate, he said, voice warm with just enough guilt to infuriate her. Jonathan, she replied, cool but civil. His eyes flicked to Aiden. And you are? Aiden Blake, Aiden said, shaking his hand. Boyfriend. Jonathan's smile barely twitched. Didn't know Kate was seeing someone. She keeps her private life private, Aiden said. Kate blinked. The bite in his tone was subtle, but there. And she liked it more than she should have. Right, Jonathan said with a clipped nod. Well, I guess I'll see you both tomorrow. As he turned away, Aiden leaned closer to her ear. That's the man you lost sleep over? Don't start, she muttered. I'm not judging. I'm just surprised he didn't combust from being in the same room as humility. Kate burst into a laugh, small, but real. And for the first time since arriving, the tension eased, even if only for a moment. Later that night, back in their shared room, Kate changed in the bathroom while Aiden settled on the floor with a pillow and blanket. You don't have to sleep on the floor, she said from the doorway. We can do the blanket divide thing on the bed. He looked up. Are you sure? I mean, you already pretended to be my soulmate in front of 50 people. Might as well keep the show going. He stood and adjusted the covers while she climbed in on the opposite side. The lights clicked off. Silence settled between them, but not the awkward kind. The kind that made you aware, very aware, that someone else was breathing in the dark with you. Aiden spoke softly. Kate. Yeah. Just so we're clear. You don't have to keep pretending you're not worth fighting for. She froze. He turned over and said nothing else. And Kate stared at the ceiling, heart pounding. Because for the first time, she wasn't so sure it was pretend anymore. Chapter 5. Rehearsal Dinner Revelations. The next day began with too much sunlight and not enough caffeine. Kate sat at the breakfast nook overlooking the vineyard, her mug cradled between both hands. The view from the Hawthorne estate was annoyingly beautiful. Rows of neat vines cascading over gentle hills, morning fog rising in wisps like some romantic painting. She used to imagine getting married here. Back when she thought her future included someone who would never betray her. Back when her sister still knocked before entering Kate's bedroom to borrow lipstick. Aiden walked in, hair still damp from the shower, wearing a charcoal gray sweater and black slacks. Effortless, like he belonged in every room. He slid into the chair across from her, held up his mug. To surviving day one. She clinked hers against his. 1 down, 2 to go. You okay? I'm fine, she said, the words automatic. Then, before he could call her on it, she added, I just want to get through the rehearsal dinner tonight without screaming. I can help with that, he said. Distraction is one of my core services. She gave a tired smile. What's the other one? Charm. Sarcasm. Unexpected depth. Depends on the package tier. Kate laughed softly. It wasn't loud, but it was real. And in this place, that felt like a win. By late afternoon, the Hawthorne estate had transformed. Twinkle lights wrapped around the porch railings. White hydrangeas lined the stone path toward the outdoor tent where the rehearsal dinner would be held. String musicians rehearsed near the fountain, their classical notes floating through the warm air. Kate changed into a sleek black dress, simple lines, cap sleeves, a gold belt. Elegant, but understated. Aiden wore a deep burgundy button-up and a fitted blazer that made her second-guess her own heartbeat. Just pretend it's a gala, he said lightly as they approached the tent. I'm used to galas where no one wants to see me cry. Then let's make sure they don't get the satisfaction. Inside, long tables stretched under the canopy, lit by hanging lanterns. Guests mingled, sipping champagne and sharing childhood stories of Lila and Jonathan. Kate gripped Aiden's arm just a little tighter. I've got you, he whispered. Just like we rehearsed. That phrase, just like we rehearsed, shouldn't have made her pulse spike. But it did. The evening started off tolerable. Aiden charmed the guests like he was born to it, sharing clever anecdotes, completely fabricated, complimenting the decor, sincerely, and even managing to get Clarice to laugh out loud. You're quite the addition to our family, she told him, wineglass in hand. Kate watched him from across the table, her chest tightening. It wasn't just that he was good at this. It was that he made it look easy, and she didn't feel so alone. But that peace shattered the moment Jonathan stood to give his toast. A hush fell over the room. Lila beamed beside him, fingers resting on his wrist. Jonathan raised his glass and smiled, practiced, polished. When I first met Lila, he began, I never imagined we'd end up here. I thought I knew love before. I thought I understood loyalty, timing, and commitment. Kate's blood turned to ice. I was wrong, he said, eyes flicking toward Kate for just a heartbeat. And that was all it took. She didn't hear the rest of the speech. Not really. Just fragments. With Lila, I learned what it means to be chosen, grateful for second chances, and to finally be with the person you were always meant to find. Every word was a match against old wounds. Kate's fingers curled around her napkin until her knuckles went white. Aiden noticed. He leaned in, his voice low. Want to go for a walk? She didn't hesitate. Yes. They slipped out of the tent without fanfare, weaving through the gardens until the music and chatter faded behind them. They found an old stone bench near the koi pond and sat in silence. Kate stared at her hands. I can't believe he did that, she whispered. Aiden waited. He looked at me while saying those things, like he wanted me to hear them. He did, Aiden said gently. That wasn't a toast. That was a performance. She laughed bitterly. We're all performing this weekend, aren't we? Aiden didn't answer. She looked at him. Do you ever forget it's fake? He hesitated. Sometimes. Is that what happened with the others? The women who hired you? He shook his head. No. I keep things clean. Boundaries. That's the only way this works. And yet you're here, she said, softer now. Sitting beside me in the dark, listening to me fall apart. Aiden turned to her. His expression was unreadable, but his voice was quiet, steady. You're not falling apart. You're standing in front of the hardest chapter of your story and choosing not to run. That's not weakness, Kate. That's strength. She blinked. He reached out, brushing a tear she hadn't realized had fallen. And that simple gesture, no show, no act, wrecked her more than Jonathan's entire toast. I'm sorry, she whispered. I don't know why I keep crying. Because you're human. They sat for another long stretch, the stars beginning to pierce the navy sky above. Finally, she asked, what about you? What about me? Who do you talk to when things hurt? His jaw flexed. Usually? No one. Sounds lonely. It is, he admitted. But sometimes it's safer than letting someone in. She studied him. Funny, she said. You pretend for a living, but you're the most honest person I've met in years. He smiled faintly. It's easier when you know it's temporary. She didn't like that answer. Didn't like the quiet ache that opened behind it. They returned to the house in silence, the night colder than before. In their room, Kate went straight to the bathroom to change into pajamas. When she emerged, Aiden had already set up his blanket on the couch. She paused. You don't have to sleep there, she said. Again, I want to give you space. But what if I don't want space? He looked up, eyes searching hers. Kate. She shook her head. I'm not asking for anything. I don't want to pretend for a few hours. He nodded slowly. They got into bed, far apart, but facing each other, the lamp still on. Do you remember the first rule? She asked. No kissing unless necessary, he replied. Good, she whispered, eyes already closing. Because somehow, his presence was the only thing keeping her together. And pretending or not, she didn't want to fall asleep alone. Chapter 6, A Dance Too Real. The wedding day arrived wrapped in the hush of early morning fog. Kate woke with a strange ache behind her ribs. It took her a few seconds to remember where she was, her old bedroom, a man beside her in bed, and the unmistakable scent of white roses drifting through the open window. Aiden was already awake. He lay on his back, one arm tucked behind his head, staring at the ceiling with a quiet stillness that made her chest tighten. She turned slowly to face him. You sleep okay? She asked, voice rough from sleep. He looked over and offered a half smile. Better than I thought I would. Because of the 500 thread count sheets or the girl who talks in her sleep? A chuckle. You mutter design critiques, by the way. Told someone that their color palette lacked spiritual maturity. Kate groaned. Please never repeat that again. Aiden just smiled, sitting up. Big day today. Big day. She echoed, the words like lead in her mouth. The ceremony was scheduled for 3 p.m., but the chaos began hours earlier. Hairdressers, makeup artists, florists, caterers. The Hawthorne estate became a flurry of organized mayhem. Kate stayed out of the bridal suite, knowing better than to subject herself to Lila's particular brand of perfectionism. Instead, she walked the vineyard rows alone for a few minutes, trying to remember the version of herself who used to find peace here. Aiden found her eventually. He didn't speak right away, just walked beside her, hands in his pockets, letting the quiet stretch between them like a safety net. You okay? He asked softly. Kate looked up at him. His suit was classic black, his white shirt crisp. His tie was dark green, matching the small boutonniere pin to his lapel, a delicate sprig of rosemary, tied with ribbon. He looked like the kind of man you'd invite into your life forever. And it scared her. No, she said, honest. Want to go anyway? She nodded. Lead the way. They sat near the back of the outdoor ceremony space, framed by white folding chairs and hanging ivy. A string quartet played something elegant as guests began to arrive. When Kate saw Lila walk down the aisle in a cathedral-length veil and a backless lace gown, her throat closed. She hadn't expected to feel this. It wasn't jealousy. It was mourning. Not for Jonathan, but for everything that had been taken from her. The trust, the family unity, the certainty that some things were supposed to last. Aiden reached for her hand. She didn't look at him, just held on. And when Jonathan turned and smiled at his bride, Kate knew. Whatever remnants of love she'd once felt for him had burned away. Not with bitterness, but with clarity. The reception was held in the ballroom, a space Kate used to roller skate through as a kid when it was empty. Now it was all white tablecloths, twinkling glassware, and a six-piece jazz band playing near the fireplace. Kate felt like she was moving through a dream, or a script she hadn't agreed to act in. She and Aiden were seated at the extended family table, close enough to see Lila and Jonathan's smiles, but far enough to avoid interaction. For a while, Kate kept her head down. She sipped champagne, ate bites of chicken she didn't taste, let the noise blur around her. But then the music changed. The band struck up something slower, sweeter, and Aiden stood. "Dance with me." She blinked. "What?" "You heard me." Kate hesitated, but something in his eyes, steady, kind, unshakable, made her take his hand. The floor wasn't full, just a few scattered couples swaying in time. As he pulled her close, Kate's breath caught. His hand rested gently on her back. Their fingers laced together. It wasn't the touch that undid her. It was the way he looked at her. Like she wasn't pretending. Like she wasn't the broken sister who'd lost everything. Like she was worth dancing with, just because. They swayed slowly. Kate focused on the rhythm of the music, the brush of his chest against hers, the soft warmth of his palm. "You're a good dancer," she whispered. "My mom taught me. Said no woman should suffer through a wedding with a man who steps on her toes." "She sounds incredible." "She is." Kate met his gaze. "Why haven't you ever been married?" Aiden's smile faded slightly. "Timing. Pain. Life. That's vague. That's truthful." He spun her slowly, then drew her back into him. "You," he asked, "ever come close?" "Once," she said softly. "But he left for someone shinier." His jaw tensed. "Then he didn't deserve you." Kate swallowed. The song faded into another, equally slow, equally gentle. They didn't stop dancing. "I meant what I said," Aiden murmured. Back in the room. She looked up. "Which part?" "That you don't have to keep pretending you're not worth fighting for." Her throat tightened. "I don't know how to believe that anymore," she whispered. "Then let me help you remember." His hand moved slightly, brushing her spine, anchoring her like he'd done the night before, not with possession, but with protection. It felt real. It felt dangerous. Kate stepped back gently. "I can't," she said, voice trembling. This is fake." Aiden nodded slowly. "It was." "What do you mean?" He held her gaze. "I don't know when it stopped being pretend, Kate. Maybe somewhere between the champagne and the driveway. But I haven't been acting." Her heart pounded. "No," she said, shaking her head. "We had rules. I didn't break them," he said, his voice quiet but certain. "You let me in." She looked away. "I can't do this," she said. "I don't know how to trust again. Not yet. Maybe not ever." Aiden didn't flinch. He just stepped back. "I'm not asking for forever," he said. "I'm asking for this dance." He held out his hand again. And despite everything, she took it. Chapter 7. Her Sister's Confession. Kate had never liked the bridal suite. Even as a kid, when Lila used to pretend it was their personal castle, Kate always felt like it was a little too cold, a little too curated, a place where things were supposed to be beautiful, whether or not they were real. Now, hours after the reception ended, she found herself back there, sitting on the tufted window seat in silence. The soft glow of string lights outside cast blurred halos through the sheer curtains. Somewhere below, guests were still mingling over midnight champagne, but the music had faded and the crowd had thinned. She needed air, distance, time to think. Everything about the past 48 hours had been a carefully layered performance. From the moment she posted that ad to the moment she let Aiden pull her into a slow dance that felt too real, too right. She shouldn't have let it get that far. And yet it had. She was still trying to catch her breath when the door opened. Lila stepped in, barefoot, the train of her reception gown hooked over one wrist. Her makeup had faded, her hair loosened from its elaborate twist. For once, she didn't look perfect. She looked human. Kate stood slowly. "Shouldn't you be with your new husband?" Lila shut the door behind her and leaned against it. "He's with the guys. Nightcap and cigars. He invited me, but I told him I needed a minute." Kate crossed her arms, unsure whether to stay or leave. "I wanted to talk to you," Lila said. Kate's voice came out tight. "Now." Lila exhaled. "Maybe not the best timing, but the truth never is." Kate didn't answer. "I know what you think of me," Lila said, stepping closer. "That I'm selfish, That I took something from you. You did. Lila winced. I didn't mean to. Kate laughed. Bitter. Quiet. That doesn't make it better. I know, Lila said softly. But I didn't plan this. I didn't even want this, at first. I knew you dated Jonathan. I knew he broke your heart. And I should have walked away when he showed interest. I should have told him no. But you didn't, Kate said, cold now. You said yes. I did, Lila admitted. And I justified it to myself a dozen different ways. That you and he had already ended. That I wasn't stealing anything. That maybe I deserved something that made me feel seen. Kate shook her head. You deserved better than him. So did you, Lila whispered. That silenced them both. For a long moment. The only sound was the rustle of chiffon as Lila sat in the chair by the vanity. I kept hoping it would fade, she said. That the guilt would go away. But it didn't. Not when he proposed. Not today. Especially not when I saw you walk in with him. Kate looked at her sharply. With Aiden? Lila nodded. It wasn't just that he was handsome. It was the way he looked at you. Like you were the only one in the room. Like none of this touched you. Kate's throat tightened. It does touch me, Lila. I just got good at hiding it. Lila's eyes glistened. You've always been good at being brave. I was always the one who needed attention, needed someone to pick me. You always got picked, Kate said, the words slipping before she could catch them. Lila's breath caught. I didn't mean. Yes, you did, Lila said, and for once, she didn't sound offended. She sounded honest. And it's true. I always took. And you always stayed quiet. Kate turned toward the window, arms hugging herself. He told me, she said after a long silence. When he ended things with me, he told me he didn't know what he wanted, that he needed space. And then 2 months later, you were engaged. Lila closed her eyes. I didn't know how to tell you. I kept telling myself he loved me, and that made it okay. But I don't think he really knows what love is. Kate's voice was hoarse. Then why marry him? Lila's lips trembled. Because I'm tired of being alone. Kate turned. So you're settling? I don't know what I'm doing, Lila confessed. But it doesn't feel like the dream I thought it would be. And that terrifies me. Kate wanted to feel vindicated. Wanted to feel some satisfaction that maybe Lila didn't win after all. But instead, she felt something she didn't expect. Sadness. Not for herself, but for both of them. You're not the villain, Kate said quietly. You're just broken. Like me. Lila looked up. Do you hate me? Kate didn't answer for a long time. Finally, she said, not today. Lila blinked back tears. They didn't hug. They didn't fix years of wounds in one night. But something between them shifted, not forgiveness exactly, but permission to be more than what they'd been. Lila stood slowly. You deserve someone good, Katie. Someone who sees all of you and doesn't walk away. Kate didn't respond. She didn't have to. Because in her mind, one face appeared, steady, kind, and unexpected. Aiden. And for the first time since this entire charade began, she wondered, what if the role he was playing was already real? Chapter 8, The Goodbye Pact. The wedding was over. The guests had all checked out. The tables were cleared. The lights were down. And the role she'd asked Aiden to play, the fake boyfriend, the emotional buffer, the unexpected shield, was supposed to be over too. Kate stood outside the Hawthorne estate with her suitcase at her feet, watching Aiden load the last of his things into the trunk of his car. His movements were careful, measured, like he was avoiding the finality of it. The breeze carried the faint scent of roses, remnants of yesterday's ceremony still clinging to the hedges. It should have felt like closure. Instead, it felt like loss. She pulled her cardigan tighter and looked up. Well, that's it, I guess. Aiden closed the trunk and turned to face her. He had on a simple white t-shirt under a charcoal jacket, jeans, and that same calm steadiness in his eyes that had gotten her through the weekend. You survived, he said with a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. She nodded. Thanks to you. There was a long pause between them, the kind that hung with things left unsaid. So, he said, hands in his pockets. Back to normal life? Yeah, she replied, trying to sound casual. Deadlines, meetings, bad coffee. No nosy family members asking when you're getting married? She laughed lightly. Blissful silence. Another beat of quiet. Are we sticking to the plan? He asked, voice softer now. You know, the goodbye and no contact part? Kate hesitated. That rule had seemed logical when she wrote it in her notebook. When all of this had been clean and distant and safe. But now her heart was tangled up in too many things she couldn't name. Not quite love. Not quite illusion. Just real enough to hurt. I think we should, she said finally, eyes fixed on the gravel. It's what we agreed. Aiden nodded once. Slowly. Okay, he said, even though it didn't sound okay. She looked up. This weekend, it meant something to me. He smiled, quiet. It meant something to me too. Her voice caught. I'm still figuring things out. And I don't want to hurt anyone. Especially you. His jaw flexed, but his voice stayed calm. You're not hurting me, Kate. You're being honest. That's more than most people give. She bit her bottom lip, her hands tightening around the strap of her bag. If I were a different version of myself, she whispered, less scared, less guarded, I think I'd ask you to stay. His eyes didn't move from hers. And if I were a different version of me, he said gently, I think I'd say yes. The wind rustled between them, moving leaves along the driveway. Kate swallowed hard. Do you ever wish you weren't so good at pretending? Aiden smiled. Not the cocky kind, not the charming one, just sad. Honest. Every single time it starts to feel real. Silence stretched again. Then he stepped forward, slowly, and held out his hand. Goodbye, Kate. She stared at it like it was a lifeline, a tether to something fragile and beautiful that she didn't know how to hold on to. Then she took it. Warm, firm, familiar. Goodbye, Aiden. He gave her one last look, something soft and unspoken behind his eyes, then turned, climbed into his car, and drove away down the winding road. Kate stood there long after the dust had settled, suitcase still by her side. And for the first time in a long time, she didn't feel like she'd lost something she never had. She felt like she'd let go of something she might actually want, but only when she was ready. She returned to the city the next morning, back to her tiny apartment with the half-painted kitchen cabinets and a closet door that squeaked when it closed. Everything was exactly as she'd left it, except her. At work, she found herself distracted, lingering over emails, rewriting the same sentence 3 times. Her coworkers noticed. Have a good trip? One asked. She smiled. Complicated. At night, she replayed moments in her mind. Aiden's voice, his laughter, the way he looked at her when he thought she wasn't watching. She missed him, not just the role he played. Him. She stared at her phone more times than she'd admit. But they had made a pact, and breaking it would feel like betrayal, or maybe like hope. 1 week passed, then 2, and then a brown package arrived on her doorstep. No return address, no note, just a box wrapped in brown paper and a single line written in black ink on the side. The part where you stop pretending. She opened it with shaking hands. Inside, there was a small, hardcover book. Her favorite novel, The Secret Garden. Inside the cover, scribbled in familiar handwriting. Because even the most broken things can bloom again. Hey, Kate sank onto the couch, heart pounding. And then, she smiled. Not the kind of smile that comes with resolution. The kind that says, this isn't over yet. Chapter 9, Something to Believe in. Kate didn't sleep that night. She didn't cry, either. Instead, she sat on her couch with the book Aiden had sent, The Secret Garden, open in her lap, fingers tracing the note he'd written inside. Because even the most broken things can bloom again. A month ago, she would have laughed, called it cheesy. Now she was clinging to it like a promise. She'd spent so long walling herself off from anything that resembled hope, love, risk. She'd thought protection meant isolation, that avoiding pain was the only way to stay strong. But Aiden had changed that, without asking her to, without demanding anything in return. He'd simply showed up, again and again, with steady hands, gentle words, and that maddening ability to see her, not the broken version she presented to the world. And now he was gone, because she told him to be, because they had a pact. She stared at her phone, the silence pressing in. She could break the rules. She wanted to. But if she reached out, and he didn't feel the same anymore, if he'd moved on, the idea of that rejection scared her more than anything, more than Jonathan ever had. Because this wasn't about losing something shiny. It was about losing something true. The next morning, Kate walked into her favorite cafe, the little one on 5th and Maple with the crooked chalkboard menu and the barista who always wrote smiley faces on her to-go cups. It was where she and Aiden had first gone over their terms, where he'd smiled at her like she wasn't asking for something ridiculous, like helping her through heartbreak wasn't a burden. She ordered her coffee and sat at the same table they'd used that day, the one by the window. She opened her laptop, tried to answer emails. Failed. So she opened a blank document. Then she wrote, What if pretending leads you to something real? She stared at the line for a long time. Then, slowly, she kept typing. Not for work. Not for a deadline. Just for her. The words poured out. A story she hadn't known was inside her. About a woman who asked a stranger to pretend to love her, only to realize she'd fallen for him somewhere between the lies and the laughter. A story about bravery. Not the kind with loud declarations, but the quiet kind. The kind that knocks on your door wearing a borrowed suit and asks if you're ready to try again. Kate wrote for hours, and when she finished the first 3 chapters, she sat back and whispered, "Okay." Then she picked up her phone. No more waiting. "Kate. Hi. I broke the rule. I hope you don't hate me for it." 3 minutes passed. Then 10. She told herself not to look again. Not to hope. But then, Aiden. Rule-breaking suits you. Where are you right now? Her heart jumped. Kate. Maple Street Cafe. The one with the smiley cups. Aiden. Stay there. 22 minutes later, the bell above the cafe door chimed. She didn't look up right away. She was too afraid it wouldn't be him. But when she did, there he was. No suit. No pretense. Just Aiden. In jeans, a black jacket, and that look. The one that said he never really left. He walked straight to her table. She stood slowly, her legs unsteady. Neither of them spoke. And then she blurted, "I'm scared." He reached out, his hand brushing hers. "So am I. I thought I was okay with goodbye," she said, voice trembling. "But I'm not." He nodded once. "I'm not either. I don't know what this is yet." "We don't have to name it," he said. "We just have to keep showing up." Her eyes burned. "I don't want perfect," she whispered. "I just want real." Aiden smiled, soft, warm, and sure. "Then let's be real. Together." He reached for her, slowly, giving her space to back away. She didn't. Instead, she stepped into him, resting her head against his chest, letting his arms close around her. And for the first time since the ad, the driveway, the fake kisses, and the rules, it didn't feel like pretending at all. It felt like home. Chapter 10, A Real First Date. It took them 3 days to schedule it. Not because they were playing games, but because, for the first time, Kate wanted to get it right. There had been so many performances, perfectly timed entrances, borrowed tuxedos, practiced lines whispered at sunset. But this was their first real moment. No pressure, no family to fool, no pact to uphold. Just Kate, just Aiden, and a nervous heartbeat that didn't know how to stop fluttering. She chose the place. A small Italian restaurant tucked into a quiet corner of the city, with string lights strung across the ceiling and basil plants on every table. It wasn't trendy. It wasn't expensive. But it was hers. A hidden favorite from before everything fell apart. She arrived 5 minutes early, hair soft around her shoulders, wearing a dark green dress that made her eyes look a little brighter than usual. Aiden was already waiting at the host's stand. She paused for a moment when she saw him. He wasn't trying to impress anyone. He was just there, relaxed, hands in his pockets. And when he saw her, his entire expression shifted into something so warm it made her stomach flip. "Hi," she said, a little breathless. "Hi," he replied. "You look—" She raised an eyebrow. "Don't say perfect, or radiant, or stunning." "I was going to say happy," he said, smile tugging at his lips. Her breath caught. "That's new." He offered his arm. "Shall we?" Their table was near the window. Candlelight flickered between them, and the clink of silverware and laughter hummed softly around the room. They didn't rush. They didn't hide. They ordered bruschetta, shared pasta, and split a slice of chocolate tart. And somewhere between the roasted garlic and the tiramisu, Kate realized her hands weren't shaking anymore. "So," she said, sipping her wine, "no aliases tonight." "Just Aiden," he said. "No script. No pretend backstory about our dramatic meet-cute at the Louvre." He chuckled. Tempting, but no. Kate rested her chin in her hand. "Tell me something real, then. Something I haven't heard before." He hesitated. "Okay." She waited. "I used to want to be a firefighter," he said finally. "When I was 10. Kate blinked. "Seriously?" He nodded. "I liked the idea of showing up when people needed help. Of running toward the thing everyone else was running from. That's kind of what you do now, though. In your own way." He gave a quiet smile. "Yeah. But I think the reason I do it is different now." Kate tilted her head. "Why do you do it?" "Because once, someone didn't show up for me. And I swore I'd never be that person to someone else." She swallowed. "Who didn't show up?" "My dad," he said, not flinching. He left when I was 7, came back when I was 13, stayed 2 months, and left again. I stopped waiting after that. I'm sorry. Don't be, Aiden said gently. It taught me something. What? That people can disappoint you. But you get to choose whether that disappointment defines you. Kate stared at him, heart full and aching all at once. You're the bravest person I know, she whispered. He shook his head. No, that's you. She looked down, fingers tracing the edge of her plate. I don't feel brave. Most days, I still hear that voice, the one that says I wasn't enough for him, that I'm too serious, too cold, too complicated. Aiden leaned forward, voice low. Then let me say it louder. Kate met his eyes. You are more than enough. And the only thing complicated about you is how you keep giving to people who didn't earn it. Her breath hitched. He reached across the table, palm up. She placed her hand in his. Warmth. Steadiness. No more pretending, she said softly. No more pretending, he echoed. After dinner, they didn't rush to leave. They walked the block twice, pausing at a park bench under a canopy of soft streetlight and night-blooming jasmine. Kate sat first. Aiden followed. She glanced over at him. You know this was supposed to be a job. He smiled. One of the best gigs I ever got. I didn't expect it to mean anything, she said. But it unraveled me. That's a good thing. Is it? He nodded. You can't rebuild something real until the fake parts fall away. She looked at him, heart pounding. I don't know where this is going, Aiden. I can't promise I won't freak out or take a step back. I don't need promises, he said. I just need you to be you. I'm a mess. He leaned in slightly. Then I'll be your safe place. She didn't move, didn't speak. She just leaned in, slowly, until her forehead rested against his. No kiss, just breath, stillness, connection. And somehow, that was more intimate than anything they'd shared in front of 100 watchful wedding guests. When they finally pulled back, Kate smiled. A real one. No stage directions. No cues. Just hers. Later, when he walked her to her door, he didn't ask to come in. He didn't push for more. He just stood there on the porch, watching her with the kind of look that stayed long after the moment ended. Thanks for dinner, he said. Thanks for showing up. She turned to go, but then paused. Looked over her shoulder. Aiden. Yeah. This wasn't our first date. No. She smiled. That was the rehearsal dinner. This was our second. He grinned. So when's our third? Kate stepped closer, eyes dancing. Tomorrow, she said. If you're free. He laughed softly. I'll clear my schedule. And with that, she stepped inside and closed the door, but not without leaning her back against it and letting out a breath that felt like the start of something brand new. Something real. Something worth showing up for. Chapter 11. Her past isn't finished yet. Kate was laughing when she opened the door. Still breathless from something Aiden had said in the hallway, her cheeks flushed, eyes dancing. Their third official date had ended with her favorite tacos, a spontaneous trip to a bookstore, and 30 minutes spent arguing over whether Pride and Prejudice or Persuasion was the superior Austen novel. It was the happiest she'd felt in years, and that terrified her. She stepped into her apartment and kicked off her shoes, Aiden close behind, carrying a bag of used books they'd convinced each other to buy. You're seriously going to read that one? She teased, pointing to the historical mystery he'd impulsively grabbed from a discount bin. Absolutely, he said, tossing it onto her couch. If it's terrible, I'll just say I'm researching bad writing techniques. Kate grinned and headed into the kitchen. Want tea? Sure. Something calming, he said. I'm still recovering from that burrito-sized taco you made me eat. She laughed, the sound unburdened. Pure. But then, a knock. It came from the front door. Firm. Intentional. Kate frowned and glanced at Aiden. It's almost 9, she said, drying her hands. I'm not expecting anyone. Aiden stood quietly as she padded to the door. She pulled it open, and her whole world went still. Jonathan, hair neatly combed, coat draped over one arm, and that same easy charm he always wore like a mask. Except this time, he wasn't smiling. Kate, he said, voice low. Can we talk? Aiden stepped forward behind her, quiet but present. Jonathan's eyes flicked to him, then narrowed slightly. Kate's throat tightened. What are you doing here? I need to speak to you, Jonathan said. Alone. She didn't move. Why? Because I think I made a mistake. Kate shut the door behind her and stepped outside. She didn't invite him in. She didn't want Aiden to have to hear any of this. Not until she understood what this even was. Jonathan stood a few feet away on the landing, his breath visible in the cool evening air. I debated coming, he said. You shouldn't have. I know, he said, but I couldn't stop thinking about the wedding. About you. Kate crossed her arms. You're married. I know, he said again. But that doesn't change the fact that something's not right. Kate's heart pounded. With Lila? With me? She stared at him. Is this some kind of twisted guilt trip? No, it's not. Jonathan stepped closer. I've been remembering what we had. Before everything got messy. Before I got scared. You didn't get scared, Jonathan, she said quietly. You got bored. His face flinched. You chased something newer. Shinier. And you didn't care who it hurt. He exhaled. Maybe. But I was wrong. I see that now. Kate's voice shook. You came here to tell me that now? After the wedding? I came here because I thought maybe you deserved an apology, he said. And maybe a second chance. She laughed, sharp and stunned. You've got to be kidding. I'm not. Silence. Then she said, I don't want an apology. And I definitely don't want a second chance. Jonathan looked stunned. You're seriously telling me you've moved on that quickly? With him. His name is Aiden. And no, it's not quick. It's real. Jonathan scoffed lightly. You really think some guy you hired for a fake weekend is going to stick around when things get hard? Kate didn't hesitate. Yes, she said. Because he already did. She walked back inside before he could say another word. Her hands were shaking when she locked the door behind her. Aiden was standing by the kitchen table, silent, unreadable. You heard that? She asked. Most of it. She waited, unsure what came next. Would he pull away? Would he start doubting everything they'd built? But instead, he said, Are you okay? She nodded. I think so. Just stunned. Do you want to talk about it? She crossed the room and sat on the arm of the couch. For a long time, I thought if Jonathan ever came back, if he apologized, said he regretted leaving, that I'd crumble, that I'd want to take him back, just to feel wanted again. Aiden moved closer, quiet. But I didn't feel anything, she whispered. Not really. Just done. That's a good thing. I think it is. She looked up at him. You believe me, right? That he doesn't matter anymore. I do. But. No but, Aiden said. Just. I'm not going to pretend it doesn't scare me. Her stomach dropped. You think I'll go back to him? No, he said quickly. I don't. But I know what it's like to be someone's safe choice. And I don't want to be that. Not with you. You're not, she said softly. You're the brave choice. Aiden's eyes searched hers. She took his hand. I'm choosing you, Aiden. Not because he let me down, but because you didn't. He exhaled slowly, like he'd been holding his breath all night. Okay, he said. They stood like that for a long time, the apartment quiet around them. Then Aiden smiled, slow and warm. So, he said, remind me again which Austen heroine you think you are? Kate laughed and leaned her head against his shoulder. Still undecided, she said. But tonight, I think I might be the girl who finally learned how to stop looking back. Chapter 12. The offer that changes everything. Kate wasn't used to being wanted. Professionally, sure, her design work was solid, reliable, clean. Clients praised her. Deadlines bowed to her consistency. She was the kind of person companies trusted to get things done. But this felt different. The email arrived on a Tuesday afternoon. Subject line, exclusive opportunity, please respond urgently. She almost deleted it, assuming it was spam. But the sender's name stopped her cold. Willow and Hart Media Group. They were the design firm in Manhattan, known for their edgy editorial spreads, high-end clients, and cutthroat competition. Kate clicked it open. The email was short, polished, clearly curated. We've been following your portfolio. One of our senior art directors flagged your recent freelance campaigns as fresh and emotionally compelling. We're expanding and would like to discuss a full-time role based in New York. Please let us know if you're open to relocation and a creative lead position. Claudia Hart, Executive Creative Director. Kate read it 3 times, then sat back, stunned. New York. Senior Creative Lead. At Willow and Hart. She should have been celebrating. She would have, 6 months ago. Before everything changed. Before Aiden. That night, she didn't say anything. Aiden came over after work, carrying Thai takeout and the worst movie he could find in the streaming queue, his newest tradition. They sat on the couch, half watching, half laughing, and when he kissed her forehead as she leaned against him, she wanted to freeze the moment in amber. But her heart was loud, conflicted, because she was building something with him. Something good, something real, and the idea of starting over in another city, far from the life that had just begun to make sense, filled her with quiet dread. She stayed silent through dinner, through dessert, through the ridiculous movie credits. And only when Aiden stood to leave did she blurt it out. "I got a job offer." He turned back, one hand on the door. "Oh." She stood, too. "It's kind of a big deal." He smiled gently. "Well, of course it is. You're incredible. Where's it from?" She hesitated. "New York." A beat, then another. His expression didn't change, but something behind his eyes dimmed just slightly. "Wow," he said. "That is big." She nodded, arms crossed. "It's a senior position. Better pay. Huge exposure. Sounds like everything you've worked for." "I haven't said yes," she added quickly. "You haven't said no either." "No." Aiden walked toward her. "What are you thinking?" "I don't know," she whispered. "Part of me feels like I'd be crazy to turn it down. But another part." He waited. "I don't want to leave what we're building here." His shoulders eased, but only slightly. "Then don't." "But what if I regret it? What if this is my only shot at something more?" He stepped closer. "What if this, you and me, is the more?" Her eyes welled. "I wish the timing was different." "So do I," he said softly. She bit her lip. "I hate that it feels like a choice between a career and a heart." "It shouldn't have to be," he said. "But if it is, I need you to know something." Kate looked up. "I want you to take the job," Aiden said. "Not because I want to lose you, but because I never want to be the reason you shrink your life." Her breath caught. "But if I go, we'll figure it out. Long distance. If it means not losing you." "Yeah, we'll try." Kate's voice cracked. "Why are you being so good?" "Because you've only ever had people ask you to settle. I want to be the one who tells you to soar." Tears slipped down her cheek. He wiped them with his thumb. "But if you stay, I won't pretend I wouldn't be the happiest man in the world." She laughed through her tears. "You're impossible." "I'm patient," he said, "and slightly in love with a brilliant woman who's trying very hard not to break both our hearts." Kate closed the distance between them and kissed him. It wasn't a passionate kiss. It was quiet, steady, certain. When they pulled apart, she whispered, "I need time." "You've got it." Then he left, and she sat on the edge of the couch for a long time. The city outside pressing against her windows, the noise in her heart louder than ever. 2 days passed. She told Lila about the offer. Her sister cried. "You deserve this," she said. "You always have." Kate nodded, but her chest ached. She prayed quietly that night, not for a sign, not for a miracle, but for clarity. The next morning, she met with a friend who'd moved to New York last year. They talked logistics, apartment prices, commute times. It all sounded impressive, shiny, but something inside her stayed heavy. On Friday morning, she sat down at her desk, opened a blank email. Subject: Creative Director Opportunity. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard. And then she typed, "Thank you for the generous offer. I'm deeply honored. After careful consideration, I've decided to decline at this time. Wishing you all the best. Kate Rivers." She hit send. Her hands were shaking, but her heart? Steady. For once, she wasn't choosing safety, or fear, or even ambition. She was choosing something that didn't have a title. Something brave. Something real. That night, she knocked on Aiden's door. He opened it, surprised. "Hey." "I said no," she said. He blinked. "What?" "I turned it down." He stared at her. "Kate, I want to be here," she said, voice trembling. "With you. With this. I don't need Madison Avenue to know my worth." She took a breath. "I already know it. Because of you." Aiden pulled her into his arms. And she didn't second-guess it. Didn't look back. Because for the first time in her life, she wasn't chasing anything. She was home. Chapter 13. The moment it all makes sense. The days that followed felt like spring. Not the season. Not in weather or flowers or warmth. It was still early autumn, with its golden skies and wind-swept sidewalks. But inside Kate, something new had bloomed. Peace. Not the passive kind. Not the silence after noise. This peace had come at a cost. Hard-earned, deep-rooted. Like breathing again after holding it for far too long. It was found in the way she woke up without anxiety curling in her stomach. In how she opened her laptop with purpose instead of dread. In how she smiled when she passed by a mirror. Not because of how she looked, but because of who she was becoming. And most of all, in how she felt when Aiden walked into a room. He'd come over on Saturday with a tray of croissants and an old playlist he'd made in college titled "For Falling," slowly. I made it for a girl who never knew I liked her, he said with a sheepish grin as he pressed play. But now I'm upgrading its purpose. Kate laughed, then listened as soft indie folk filled her apartment. You ever tell her? She asked. Nope. Why not? She didn't need another boy in love with her. She needed a friend. Kate turned toward him, warmth in her chest. You're good at that. Being what people need. He shrugged. I think I just learned to pay attention. To what? To the difference between someone asking to be saved and someone asking to be seen. Kate's breath caught. She'd spent most of her life trying not to be either. They sat on the floor that evening, surrounded by blankets and records and half-finished mugs of tea. Aiden leaned back against the couch, legs stretched out in front of him. Kate lay beside him, her head on his shoulder. I keep thinking about the first time I saw you, she murmured. He smiled. The ad? No. Before that. Aiden turned to her, curious. The party, she said. The one at Lila's engagement. You were talking to a kid near the cake table. He'd spilled juice on his shirt, and you tied a napkin around him like it was a superhero cape. He blinked. That was you. Watching. She nodded. I remember thinking, that guy doesn't care if anyone's watching. He just does what's kind. Aiden chuckled. Well, I'm glad I made an impression. You did, she said. You always have. He looked at her then, not like someone who was falling, but someone who already had. What are we doing, Kate? He asked gently. She didn't panic, didn't freeze. Because for once, the answer wasn't terrifying. It was clear. We're doing the real thing. Aiden's eyes softened. You sure? I've never been more. He reached for her hand. She laced her fingers through his. I don't need perfect, she whispered. I just want honest. I can do honest, he said. Messy, honest, forever. They stayed like that for hours, limbs tangled, hearts unguarded. As the music played and the candles flickered and the world outside their window turned quietly gold. Kate had spent years waiting for a moment like this. But now she realized it had never been about the moment. It had always been about the person beside her when the moment finally came. Sunday morning came with rain. Not a downpour. Just a light mist that made the sidewalk shimmer and the city smell like earth and cinnamon. Kate and Aiden walked hand in hand through the farmer's market, stopping for honey sticks and fresh bread and little bundles of lavender wrapped in brown paper. People glanced at them, not because they were remarkable, but because they fit. The kind of fit you can't fake. Aiden picked out an old record from a stall and turned to her. How do you feel about cheesy 80s ballads? Kate grinned. Only if you're prepared to dance with me in the kitchen. Deal. Back at her apartment, Kate set the record spinning and turned to him with raised eyebrows. Well, Aiden offered his hand. She took it. They danced. Slow, swaying silly. Her bare feet on his boots, her head tucked under his chin. The music filled the small space like a memory still unfolding. And then, without preamble, Aiden whispered, I love you. Kate froze. Not because she didn't want to hear it, but because it was the first time in her entire life that it hadn't felt like a demand, a bargain, or a trap. It felt like a gift. She looked up at him, tears already forming. You do? I do, he said simply. Not because you made me fall, but because being with you made me rise. Kate let out a soft, tearful laugh, then whispered back, I love you too. Later that night, curled up on the couch as the rain tapped gently against the windows, Kate turned to him. I used to think real love was supposed to be loud, she said. Explosive, like fireworks or crashing waves. Aiden tilted his head. And now I think it's the quiet moments. The ones where you feel safe enough to breathe without trying to earn it. He kissed her temple. I promise, he murmured. You never have to earn it with me. It was in that moment, in the quiet, in the calm, in the absolute enoughness of it all, that Kate realized. This wasn't the story she'd expected. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't scripted. But it was hers. And it finally made sense. Chapter 14, one last scene. The last time Kate wore a dress like this, it had been borrowed. Part of a role. A lie wrapped in silk and fake smiles. This time, the dress was hers. Simple. Elegant. Sleeveless with a flowing skirt that whispered when she walked. Not a wedding dress. Not a costume. Just something soft and lovely, like the woman she was becoming. She stood in front of her mirror, smoothing the fabric over her hips. No stage directions. No audience. Just a heart that had finally stopped performing and started believing. Outside, Aiden was pacing on the porch. He wasn't nervous. Well, Maybe a little. But not in the old way, not with dread or doubt. This was the kind of nervous that came when everything was right and you didn't want to mess it up. He had a box in his jacket pocket. Not the kind with a ring. Not yet. But something else. Something Kate had once told him she never got. He glanced up as the front door opened. And there she was. Barefoot, radiant, hair falling in soft waves around her shoulders. And smiling, not for anyone else. Just for him. You ready? She asked. Only if you are. She stepped out, took his hand, and closed the door behind her. They walked down the driveway and into a quiet Sunday afternoon. It was Lila's idea. Come to the fundraiser, she'd said. It's for the school's library expansion. And you too can help with the closing skit. You know, one last fake couple moment, for charity. Kate had rolled her eyes. Aiden had laughed. But in the end, they said yes. Not because they owed anyone anything, but because the story had started with a performance. It felt poetic to close the loop that way. And maybe, just maybe, to show everyone how real love could look when it wasn't pretending. The auditorium was packed. Local families, teachers, students. The air buzzed with laughter, the rustling of programs, and the smell of popcorn from the bake sale table in the hallway. Backstage, Kate peeked through the curtain and spotted Lila grinning at her from the front row. Remember your lines? Aiden asked, adjusting his fake boutonniere. Kate smirked. I thought we were improvising. We are. But I came prepared just in case. He pulled a folded napkin from his jacket pocket. Kate took it, unwrapped it, and blinked. Inside was a handwritten script. Short, sweet, scene, happily ever after. She asks, was it ever really fake? He says, not for a second. They laugh. He kisses her. Curtain. Kate looked up, something warm stirring in her chest. You wrote our ending. No, Aiden said gently. You did. I just had the privilege of being part of it. A stagehand called their cue. Aiden offered his arm. Kate took it. And they walked out together, under the lights. They didn't follow the script. They didn't need to. The moment they stepped into the spotlight, the crowd quieted. Kate looked around, not as the woman who once felt like a background character in her own life, but as someone seen, not for the performance, but for the person she'd become. Aiden turned to her. So, he said, voice light. Is this the part where you ask if it was ever really fake? Kate smiled. You beat me to it. He stepped closer. Wasn't fake for me. Not even at the beginning. Especially not then. And now. Aiden reached into his jacket and pulled out a small box. The audience collectively gasped. Kate blinked. Wait, what? He opened the lid. Not a ring. A key. A vintage-style brass key with a little charm hanging from the end. Kate stared. I found a place, he said softly, only loud enough for her to hear. Nothing fancy. Just a small fixer-upper with good bones and a window that looks like it was made for slow mornings and strong coffee. Her throat tightened. I don't want to rush, Aiden said. I don't want to assume. I want you to have this. To know that I'm not going anywhere. That this is real. That you are my home. Tears welled in Kate's eyes. She took the key, fingers curling around it like it was something sacred. Then she whispered, Can we write the rest together? Aiden smiled. Wide, real, and steady. Always. And then, for the first time in public, without pretense or pact, he kissed her. A kiss not for applause. Not for show. But for love. And the audience? They stood. Clapping. Cheering. Laughing. But none of that mattered. Because for Kate and Aiden, the curtain had finally risen on the real thing. Epilogue, 1 year later. Kate's book was called Falling for the Role. A fictionalized account, of course. Names changed. Dates blurred. Some drama added, as all good books required. But the heart of it? Unmistakably real. It became a modest bestseller in the CleanRomance category. Readers praised it for being honest, hopeful, and quietly healing. Just like the author. And just like the life she was now living in a cozy cottage with soft light, creaky floors, and a man who still brought her tea when she forgot to eat lunch. Aiden framed the napkin script and hung it by her desk. Kate hung the key on a ribbon by the door. They still had hard days. Moments when doubts crept in, or the dishes piled up, or the world outside pressed a little too hard. But through it all, they remembered how the story had started, and how they'd chosen to write something better. Together. Dear Ever After family, thank you so much for joining us on this journey through Falling for the Role. What started as a pretend relationship became a powerful reminder that real love doesn't need a script. It just needs two hearts willing to show up. honestly, imperfectly, and fully. Kate and Aiden taught us that the past doesn't have to define us, that second chances are real, and that sometimes the truest love begins where pretending ends. We hope this story made you smile, maybe cry a little, and most of all, believe again in slow, honest, soul-deep love. If it touched your heart, please like, share, and subscribe so more listeners can discover clean, inspiring romances just like this one. Until next time, may your life be filled with grace, courage, and unexpected love.